Everything we think we know about Gene Hackman's final days might be a carefully woven illusion. Official reports paint a somber picture. Hackman, a legendary Hollywood figure, quietly slipping away in solitude alongside his wife, Betsy Arakawa. Yet the more we dig into the specifics, the more contradictions rear up contradictions so unnerving that it's hard to dismiss them as mere coincidences. Within hours of Betsy's reported passing, phone logs show mysterious calls made from her number, calls that seem impossible if she was truly gone. Adding another layer of intrigue is the sweeping gag order that chokes off nearly every detail about the Hackman's final moments. Autopsy files, sealed, photographs of the crime scene, under lock and key. Even images of animals found on the property have been suppressed. What could be so sensitive about a couple's quiet end that authorities feel compelled to muzzle all evidence? Why hide pictures of pets or wildlife unless they suggest a scenario more disturbing than the official narrative? Perhaps the strangest element in all this is the contradictory timeline itself. If Betsy was already gone by February 11th, why did phone records show activity on her line the very next day, particularly calls to a medical facility? Could it be a system glitch? Or did someone else inside the home grab her phone, reaching out for help in secrecy? Add in the fact that Gene Hackman supposedly languished alone for a week before anyone noticed, and you have a scenario riddled with holes and unspoken possibilities. Of course, it's critical to remember these are theories stitched together from the odd fragments that have leaked into public view, not solid proofs. There may be perfectly rational explanations for every one of these puzzles, waiting just beyond the locked records. But as it stands, the shroud of secrecy around Gene Hackman's final days only deepens public suspicion. If the official story truly holds up, why seal away everything so thoroughly? And if it doesn't, then what hidden truths are powerful enough to warrant an entire cloak of silence? Betsy Arakawa was officially declared gone on February 11th, yet phone records indicate that her line was used at least once on the morning of February 12th. That single astonishing detail blasts a gaping hole in the neat picture authorities tried to paint. If Betsy truly passed on the date they claim, then who picked up her phone just one day later? Was it a simple carrier glitch, or does it point to a deeper deception no one is prepared to face? What makes this even more unsettling is the nature of those calls. They weren't random dials to friends or relatives, but to a medical facility known as Cloudberry Health. Why would a line belonging to someone no longer alive be reaching out to a specialized medical center instead of an emergency line or a close confidant? Even more baffling, there's evidence that Cloudberry Health called back. That means someone actively answered the phone and spoke a near impossibility if Betsy was already gone. The authorities, caught off guard by these leaks, offered a vague acknowledgement that the phone did indeed register activity on February 12th, but they never explained why. Instead of clearing up the confusion, they doubled down on the official narrative, insisting Betsy's confirmed date of passing remained unchanged. This blatant contradiction has sparked a storm of speculation. Could Betsy have clung to life longer than the official timeline admits? Or did a hidden presence in the house use her phone for reasons we can't begin to guess? If there's a logical explanation like a routine database error or an accidental redial, no one has stepped forward to share it. Instead, the entire affair has been hushed under a thick layer of legal gag orders and sealed files. The last thing investigators seem to want is a spotlight shining on the day after Betsy was reported gone. Yet that single day, and the phone calls placed during it, might be the key to unraveling a far bigger secret one that just might rewrite everything we believe about Gene Hackman's final hours. Not long after the public learned of Betsy Arakawa's puzzling phone calls, a wave of legal barriers descended around the entire case fast and uncompromising. Gene Hackman's estate, in tandem with local authorities, secured a sweeping gag order that slammed the door on nearly every trace of documented evidence. Autopsy reports that would normally clarify the cause and manner of death locked away. Photographs from the inside of the Hackman residence, possibly capturing the scene as it truly was, sealed under strict judicial command. Even lapel cam footage worn by responding officers, a routine part of any investigation, was swiftly classified as off-limits to anyone beyond a tight circle of officials. Yet the most bewildering part isn't just the ban on images of Gene and Betsy. Among the barred materials are photographs of animals discovered on the property, which the gag order meticulously specifies must remain hidden from the press and the public. Why single out the house's animals? If their presence was benign, what possible reason exists to conceal those images? This curious detail has stoked theories that perhaps something about these animals, be it household pets or wild intruders, holds a clue pointing beyond the official explanation. Some speculate it might confirm or refute the hantavirus narrative. Others believe it could be a glimpse into events that authorities are determined to keep under wraps. Authorities argue that their ironclad secrecy is simply a matter of privacy, maintaining the dignity of those involved. But in a case already riddled with oddities, that line doesn't satisfy the skeptics. If Betsy and Gene Hackman both passed peacefully, with no foul play suspected, why the sudden scramble to shut down public inquiry? Why withhold harmless evidence like living room snapshots or pictures of a family pet? And if the cause of death was truly clear-cut, why not release at least portions of the autopsy reports to dispel runaway rumors? The official stance is that the entire saga is straightforward, yet every official act says otherwise. When such an extraordinary effort is put into concealing even the smallest fragments of a story, the natural question becomes, what's really hidden behind this veil of confidentiality? The possibility that these locked-up photos, reports, and video clips might hold damning contradictions to the public narrative grows more believable with each new layer of secrecy. After all, the more desperate the push to seal information, the more likely it is that behind these closed doors, a truth far darker than we suspect is waiting to be uncovered. When word broke that Betsy Arakawa's death stemmed from hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, an exceedingly rare virus typically contracted through contact with rodent droppings, skepticism soared. While New Mexico has historically seen a handful of hantavirus cases, the Hackman residence wasn't exactly a rustic cabin in the wilderness. It was a lavish Santa Fe mansion renowned for its cleanliness and modern upkeep. The notion of infected rodents running amok in that pristine environment seems improbable at best. Even if a stray mouse or two slipped in, officials have provided no proof that such an infestation existed, and no public warnings were issued in the area. What makes this diagnosis so intriguing is how perfectly it explains Betsy's sudden passing without offering any direct insight into her final moments or Gene Hackman's subsequent isolation. Authorities say hantavirus can strike quickly, transitioning from mild flu-like symptoms to lethal respiratory distress in a shockingly short span. But if Betsy had been that ill, wouldn't there have been some indication before she apparently died on February 11th? There's no mention of fever, no urgent doctor visits, just a quiet fade from life. Stranger still is that Gene Hackman, cohabitating in close quarters with Betsy during her final days, seems to have been entirely unaffected by a virus notorious for its ruthlessness. Add in the ban on releasing pictures of any animals discovered in the house, and the hantavirus theory starts feeling more like a convenient narrative than the ironclad truth. Could the authorities be concealing evidence of a rodent problem so severe that it cast the entire household into jeopardy? Or was the hantavirus cause a smokescreen, neatly tying up Betsy's demise so that no one would delve deeper? If the official story holds water, why guard every last photo and file related to the animals present in that home? Even those willing to take the hantavirus explanation at face value admit there's something jarringly neat about it. A disease that's rare yet believable enough to avoid major scrutiny, unless, of course, you zoom in on the conflicting details. No sign of a broader outbreak in the area. No suggestion that Betsy had the sort of exposure one typically associated with catching hantavirus. And certainly no explanation for how Gene escaped unscathed while allegedly remaining in a virus-laden environment for days on end. If the lockdown on case information has any single biggest red flag, it's how swiftly everyone involved closed ranks around this explanation, leaving many observers to wonder if we've been handed an easy out for a mystery that runs far deeper than a mere rodent-borne infection. By all official accounts, Gene Hackman spent an entire week in his Santa Fe home, alone and unnoticed after Betsy's reported death on February 11th. Authorities pinpoint his final day of life to around February 18th, a date inferred from his pacemaker's last recorded signals. But in that span of 7 long days, why didn't anyone step forward to confirm he was still alive, let alone see if he was coping with grief or medical issues of his own? Friends, family, and neighbors, those who might usually keep tabs on a 93-year-old man with a heart condition, insist they assumed he was simply in mourning, respecting his privacy. Yet it strains belief to imagine that no one, not even a housekeeper or personal assistant, tried to check in. Could it be that no one dared disturb the house after Betsy's bizarre passing? Or more unsettling, might someone have intentionally kept the world at bay, ensuring Gene's isolation was absolute? Local delivery drivers reported noticing piled-up mail and newspapers, seeing lights flicker on at odd hours with no visible movement. A few even admitted they found the eerie silence concerning but hesitated to intrude. Still, for a man once considered Hollywood royalty, such total neglect feels uncanny. How did the same figure who once commanded star billing and countless red carpet events vanish so quietly, with no alarm raised for an entire week? Even more baffling is why Gene Hackman himself, if conscious, never called for help. If he was physically or mentally compromised, it could explain the lack of outgoing calls. But that doesn't address why no one else rang his doorbell or phoned his landline until it was too late. If he was in dire need, a single phone call might have saved him. Unless, of course, something within that home, some secret or unsettling reality, compelled those who knew better to stay away. Regardless of the reason, the result was the same: a Hollywood icon, presumably left to his final moments, with no audience or rescue. Whether it was an unfortunate oversight, a deliberate shunning, or something more sinister altogether, one inescapable fact looms. The legendary Gene Hackman died with no one at his side, and the puzzling shadows of that last week only get darker the more you look for a light. Just when the timeline seemed set in stone, a series of phone logs threw everything into disarray. Official reports state that Betsy Arakawa was declared deceased on February 11th. Yet astonishingly, records show that her phone was active well into the following day. On the morning of February 12th, multiple calls were made from her line calls not to a loved one, not to an emergency service, but to Cloudberry Health, a high-end medical facility known more for tailored care than for urgent crises. These aren't fleeting dials that could easily be chalked up to a system error. Carrier data confirms that Betsy's number initiated at least 3 calls on that fateful morning, with one outgoing call logged at 14:23 and a return call registered just 6 minutes later at 14:29. The details are chilling. If Betsy was truly gone, who was behind the phone? Was it Gene Hackman himself, desperate and alone, using her phone to seek help? Or was someone else in the mansion a hidden presence? Perhaps a third party with a vested interest in keeping secrets, using her line to manipulate the timeline? Even more unsettling is that the call recording from Cloudberry Health, which might have shed light on the conversation, has vanished. When pressed, the medical center cited patient privacy rules to justify the missing audio, even though Betsy was officially dead. The absence of this key piece of evidence adds another layer of mystery. It's as if someone intentionally scrubbed the data, erasing any trace of what was said during those critical minutes. The implications are profound. If these calls were not mere technical glitches, they suggest that Betsy's reported death might have been a cover, or that someone was using her identity to either mislead investigators or to communicate something urgent from within the Hackman mansion. In a house where every detail seems meticulously controlled, the idea that Betsy's phone could ring out with life or with a message after her supposed passing challenges the very foundation of the official narrative. This shocking inconsistency forces us to ask, was Betsy's demise truly final on February 11th, or did her phone serve as a lifeline for someone desperate to get a message out? And if it was Gene Hackman, why did he choose to use her line instead of his own? The disappearance of the call recording only deepens the enigma, hinting at deliberate interference to cloak a truth that someone in that home was determined to hide. One of the most disquieting and easily overlooked aspects of this investigation is the complete suppression of any images or records related to the animals found at the Hackman residence. In nearly every death scene, photos of the environment, including pets or local wildlife, help paint a complete picture. Yet here, a sweeping gag order has been imposed not only on autopsy files and crime scene photos, but also specifically on any pictures showing animals present at the scene. This isn't standard procedure. It's a deliberate move that leaves us wondering what those images might reveal. Consider this. If the official story of Betsy's demise hinges on a rare hantavirus infection, which is known to spread through rodent droppings, then any visual evidence of animal activity would be critical. Were there signs of a rodent infestation lurking in dark corners of the mansion? Did the household pets exhibit any unusual behavior in the days leading up to or following the tragic events? Such details might have exposed an environmental factor that contributed to or even contradicts the proclaimed cause of death. Yet by blocking all animal imagery, authorities effectively erase a potential line of inquiry. Some insiders speculate that the very need to hide these images suggests there might be more than just a case of an isolated viral outbreak. Perhaps there were unexpected sightings, rodents scurrying in areas where none should have been, or even pets that appeared unnervingly agitated. Alternatively, the suppression could indicate that investigators uncovered anomalies that hint at deliberate tampering. If someone had, for instance, intentionally disturbed a rodent nest or removed evidence of an infestation, the surviving animal images might have exposed a pattern of interference designed to obscure the truth. Another unsettling possibility is that these animal clues could be linked to a broader cover-up. The decision to withhold such seemingly minor details might be a calculated effort to prevent the public from connecting the dots, connecting a well-maintained, upscale mansion with evidence of an environmental hazard that no one would expect in such a setting. If the animal's behavior or condition could corroborate a hidden timeline of events or reveal signs of unusual exposure to the virus, it might compel us to question the official narrative entirely. Moreover, the fact that the gag order extends to these animal images suggests that the authorities might be protecting more than just personal privacy. Could it be that the behavior or even the presence of certain animals in the Hackman home hints at the involvement of an unknown third party or a covert operation to alter the scene after the fact? The deliberate withholding of such evidence forces us to ask, if nothing in the mansion was out of the ordinary, why is there such an extreme effort to erase every visual clue, even those that might appear trivial? In a case already filled with contradictory timelines, missing recordings, and dubious causes of death, the suppression of animal evidence stands out as a glaring red flag. It's as if the very smallest, most innocent detail, an image of a pet or a stray rodent might hold the key to unraveling a far more sinister narrative. And until those images are released, they remain one of the most perplexing and provocative omissions in a story that seems designed to keep the truth hidden in plain sight. As we step back from all these disjointed clues, mysterious phone logs, sealed evidence, inexplicable animal images, and a diagnosis that strains credibility, a deeper, more disconcerting picture emerges. The official narrative insists that Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa's final days were tragic, yet straightforward, but every fragment of evidence tells us otherwise. The contradictions multiply. A phone that rings on February 12th when Betsy should have been gone, a week-long isolation of Gene Hackman that defies common sense, and a gag order so pervasive it hides even the smallest details. All these elements weave together into a tapestry of unanswered questions. Why would authorities clamp down so tightly on every piece of evidence from autopsy reports to even images of the home's animals if nothing untoward had really occurred? The sheer extent of the secrecy suggests that what happened inside the Hackman residence may have been too explosive for public consumption. Every locked record, every suppressed photograph hints at a truth that challenges the official timeline and raises suspicions of deliberate cover-ups. Could it be that the strange calls, the conflicting dates, and the peculiar environmental clues were not mere anomalies, but rather calculated moves to mask a larger, more sinister reality? These persistent gaps in the story force us to confront a stark possibility. The narrative presented by officials might be a convenient construction, a neat ending to a mystery that is anything but resolved. While the public is told that a rare virus and natural isolation claimed the lives of these Hollywood figures, the evidence points to an alternative story laden with deception, potential third-party interference, and an unsettling atmosphere of fear and control. It leaves us to wonder whether the silence imposed on these records is intended to protect powerful interests or to hide something far more damning. In the end, the case of Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa remains an enigma, a labyrinth of unanswered questions that challenges our understanding of their final moments. The official narrative, with its neat explanations, does little to quell the doubts raised by every contradictory call log, every sealed file, and every missing piece of evidence. Instead, it deepens the mystery, leaving us to ask, is the truth being deliberately obscured to protect a darker secret lurking behind Hollywood's glitz? And if so, will we ever see the day when all the hidden records are finally brought to light, exposing a reality too shocking to ignore?